For more on the Iran negotiations and an exchange with President Trump over that and the aforementioned reflecting pool, we turn now to Ed O'Keefe at the White House. Ed, take it away.
Major, good to see you. The vice president is on his way back from Switzerland and marathon talks with Iranian, Qatari, and Pakistani officials as they try to move forward with the negotiations that are supposed to unfold here in now under 60 days. Among other things, the vice president announcing today that IAEA inspectors, International Atomic Energy Agency inspectors, are expected to return to Iran. They were there at least twice in the latter half of last year, but they'll return. He says they're building the mechanism to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, or basically ensuring that it will stay open. They're also working on ending the fighting between Israel and Hezbollah in Lebanon and stepping up a process for future negotiations, in essence, to keep these talks going. Among other things, the U.S. Treasury has now announced a 60-day license, basically 60 days for Iran to sell its oil to the world, including potentially to the United States. It would last until about August 21st. And the vice president and the president earlier floating the idea that Iranian assets could be unfrozen so that they could start spending money again, so long as most, if not all, of that money is spent on buying, in essence, American agricultural goods to feed the 91 million or so people of Iran. Now, the president spoke in the last hour after signing executive orders regarding quantum computing. We got a chance to talk to him about the Iran deal. I specifically asked regarding something the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said today, that his forces aren't leaving Lebanon anytime soon, which could end up being a key sticking point in the talks. Take a listen. Earlier today, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said his forces are not leaving Lebanon. That is a sticking point in these conversations. He said it publicly in Israel.
Well, we're going to take a look at it.
Well, what would you do to make sure that he doesn't?
Well, I'm not going to tell you what I'm going to do, but it gets solved. I'm a problem solver. I get problems solved real fast, including with Bibi.
You could see him slightly piqued there by the suggestion that Netanyahu is once again, at least publicly, saying that he isn't necessarily in agreement with what are the contours of the current talks, and he said he would find a way to deal with the Israeli leader regarding that. We'll wait and see if we learn anything more about a potential conversation between them. The other thing on the president's mind these days is what's going on with one of his big reconstruction projects here in Washington, of course, the reflecting pool. There had been plans in place to have the American flag blue colored bottom of the reflecting pool in place by the 4th of July next weekend, or weekend from this weekend. And, of course, in recent days, there's been evidence of tampering, if you will, and algae once again blooming in a reflecting pool that has always had algae, essentially, since it opened in the 1920s, about a 6-7 acre size pool. And we asked him again about that and listened to some of what he had to say. In April, you showed us pictures of what you were going to do at the pool, and you said you had a guy who was going to do it in a week for about $1 million. It's been 2 months and $16.5 million.
I spent about 6-7 weeks, and I spent probably, in terms of outside, probably $10 million, around $10 million. They say 16, but a lot of that's workers that work for the same thing. So they were going to spend $400 million. I spent 10. They were going to spend 4 years. I spent 2 months, maybe less. And I have a better product. Now, I can't help it if somebody goes in with a knife and starts hacking it up.
He alleges someone has scraped the bottom of the pool with some kind of a knife or razor and left a 250 to 350 foot gash. We've asked him for the proof. He suggested we could reach out to the National Park Service and the Interior Department for more details. We've done that, Major, and we're waiting to hear back.
Yes, the vandals are spoken of, but they are hard to locate. Ed O'Keefe, thank you very, very much. CBS News national security analyst Aaron MacLean joins me now. He's also the host of the School of War podcast. Aaron, so what the vice president talked about today was procedures and mechanisms. What do those words actually mean?
Well, that's an excellent question, Major. You know, there's a lot of ins, a lot of outs to these negotiations. It can be hard to track the details. I like to look at it as what are the fundamental objectives of both sides, and are they achieving them? The Iranians want to assert lasting control of the Strait of Hormuz. They're achieving that. It's baked into the MOU, and they are asserting that control. They want to get paid handsomely for allowing any traffic to go through. They're achieving that. Ed O'Keefe just walked us through those very broad sanctions waivers, broader than those in the JCPOA, by the way.
Right.
And
so this is like new policy that's more generous, at least on the sanctions front, than the Obama administration granted.
Now, in fairness, that is for 60 days
60
right
days,
now.
agreed.
But Iran can
but
get
real money's real money.
Real U.S. dollars, Major. Real U.S. dollars. Iran was still frozen out of the U.S. dollar market during the JCPOA era. These waivers actually allow them to get paid in dollars, potentially by American companies. Also something very difficult to achieve under the JCPOA regime. So Iran...
Very quickly, JCPOA, Joint Combined Plan of Action, that's what the nuclear deal with Obama administration is referred to frequently.
Absolutely. What we want concessions on the nuclear program. We got today inspectors. As you just very well pointed out in your introduction, they already agreed to inspectors in the MOU. So we're negotiating again for something that was already conceded.
Right. And Lebanon. What Iran said today, and there's nothing that the Vice President JD Vance said today that fundamentally disagrees with this. There's now a mechanism to talk about Lebanon consistently and constantly so the Iranians can at least evaluate with the Americans what the ceasefire is or isn't accomplishing in Lebanon. And when, as Ed O'Keefe asked the president, if the Israelis don't want to withdraw, they want to have this 6 to 10 kilometer buffer zone inside southern Lebanon, that is an area of possible disagreement.
Another Iranian objective, protecting its proxy Hezbollah. By the way, ending Iran's support for its terror proxies, a stated objective of the war. Now the structure of these negotiations enshrines that relationship. Iran wants to drive a wedge between the United States and Israel. Again, I would say succeeding. Every time there's fighting, even if initiated by Hezbollah, as it often is, Iran will say there's fighting in southern Lebanon. This is contrary to the provisions of the MOU. The negotiations are paused. The strait is closed. They did it over the weekend. They'll do it over and over again.
Very, very quickly, what do we know about traffic going through the Strait of Hormuz?
It paused briefly on Saturday when the Iranians said they were closing the strait as a consequence of what was going on in Lebanon, but we have seen more ships through on Sunday and Monday through these scattershot northern and southern routes.
Aaron MacLean, always great stuff. Thank you very much, sir.